Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk about the United States. The US isn't just world's biggest economy, it's also a particular kind of capitalism. We call it liberal market economy, or LME for short. I will explain what that means and how it's different from another kind, the coordinates markets economy, or CME. Let's start with a bit of theory. In political economy, there are three classic schools of thought, and they don't agree on one big question. What should the government do, and what should the market do? Mercantilism says the government should take the lead. Marxism says markets is unfair to workers. Liberalism takes the opposite view. Let the market lead and keep the government small. These different ideas lead to different kinds of capitalism, the LME and the CME. The US went down the liberal road, so it's clearest example of an LME. So why did the US end up as an LME? It really comes down to the history. After independence in 1783, the US wanted to break away from the Europe, and the people learned to rely on themselves. Later, during the Gilded Age, big companies, railroads, and Wall Street all grew quickly, and the stock market mattered right from the start. Here's the key point. In the US, the government isn't really a player in the economy. It's more like a referee that just set the rules. On the top of that, the US has 50 states, and the states and the federal governments often don't see eye to eye. So this market-first model wasn't built overnight. It grew slowly over a long time. That's what we call the past dependence. The past shapes the present. This history went through three stages. First, the Gilded Age, from the 19th centuries to the 1930s. This was wild capitalism. A handful of powerful bosses ran everything, and the governments barely stepped in. Second, the managerial capitalism, from the 1940s to the 1980s. After the New Deal, things became more stable. Big companies were run by a lot of managers. People often stay in one job for life, and the unions were strong. Third, and this is the one that matters most today, investor capitalism. From the 1980s onwards, the power shifted to the shareholders. The CEO pay was tied to the share price. The company began cutting jobs much more easily, and the finance became really powerful. So the America we see today comes from the last stage, the short term and focused more on the shareholders. Now let's look at how American companies actually work. First, the way they are organized. American firms are flat and flexible, and managers have lots of power, so they can reshape their teams very quickly. Second, the leadership. Companies care most about the profits. The CEO has real power, and their pay is tied to the results. So the decision is get made fast. Third, the strengths. The US is very strong in IT, software, finance, and new ideas. Just think of the Silicon Valley. And fourth, the downside. The unions are weak, and it's easy to lose your job. So the system is flexible, but doesn't give workers much security. This is the opposite of CME like Germany or Japan, where companies hold on their worker and think more about the long run. The US picks speed and flexibility over the security. The culture backs all of this up. First, Americans really believed in individualism and the American dreams. Success is down to you, and if you work hard and do well, you get reward. Second, business is direct. People are upfront and rely on written contracts, not on long-term relationships or personal trust. Third, Americans are happy to try new things and take risks. If you fail, that's fine. And starting your own business is something to be proud of. All of this fits the LME, direct, contract-based, and centered on individual. In CME, business leans much more on long-term relationships. But this model has a real downside. The welfare system is weak, and the unions are weak too. So if you lose your job, there isn't much support. Let me show you two facts. The first, inequality has been rising. This line chart shows the Gini number going from about 0.43 in 1990s to about 0.49 in 2024. Second, compared to the other rich countries, the US is the most unequal in the G7. You can see that in this bar chart. So, the US is a high-risk, high-reward model. There's real chance to get rich, but if you fail, you are on your own. So, to sum up, the US is a clear example of liberal market economy. It's led by markets, it leans on the stock market, and it also short-term and flexible. All the pieces fit together: light regulation, weak union, powerful shareholders, and the flexible job markets. This is very different from CME like Germany or Japan, which rely on the long-term relationships and the stable jobs. And that's really the main message of the varieties of capitalism. Even with globalization, countries don't all end up the same. The US stay distinctly American. Thank you.